a stopwatch on my truck outside.
Yeah, right there. Highest ranking guy does it, right? All right, we ready? All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to 2018 Annual Town Election Candidates Night. I think this is a very important thing for any community to do. I know this has been done many times before. I'd like to thank the Council on Aging and Claudia for setting this up, for inviting all of our candidates, and for providing all this delicious food, which everyone's staring at longingly. So thank you to them for that. I think it's appropriate, given the amount of democracy we have here, that we start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So to set the stage, we have 5 candidates here of people who are running for office here in Hubbardston. We have one contested election, so we're going to save that contested election for last. Every candidate's going to be allowed to come up and speak for no more than 5 minutes. All right, I'm not gonna grab someone or tackle them, but we're going to try and keep everybody at 5 minutes to give everyone a fair shake at introducing themselves. Things we'd like to hear from candidates. Many of you know some of these candidates, but maybe not everyone watching does. So who are you, what you're running for, why you're running, and then of course anything that you have prepared or you wanted to say. We're going to start with the Board of Selectmen, then go to Board of Health, Public Library Trustees has 2 candidates, and then we'll end with the contested Planning Board race. I have a couple prepared questions. Those questions are, what will you do to help this board or committee specifically that you're running for, and what experience do you bring to the position that will increase the board or committee's effectiveness? And then every candidate will get a chance to answer that, and then the gathered crowd here is welcome to do a Q&A after the 5 minutes. Any questions or concerns or contesting?
I think you should state that we're digitally recorded.
We are live and digitally recorded. All right, let's get going. So first we have from the Board of Selectmen, Jeff Williams, candidate for re-election.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Claudia, for having this again this year. When I was writing down some of the things I wanted to say, I was pretty much gearing it for the senior citizens, because 5 years ago when I got involved for the first time here in town, I began my speech by saying that I was one of you. Also, on the other side of it, I'm also a parent of a child who's in the school system, so that I was bringing both of those interests, and I still carry on those 2 roles. So I consider the senior citizens my base, if you will, and I have tried to have been your voice, and it's been an honor to serve. As it's turned out, I don't believe that 5 years have gone by this fast. So that I want to say that it has been an honor for me to serve. I believe strongly in service to the community, public service especially. I grew up in a very historical town, Lexington, and as a young kid in high school and so forth, I got involved with government there and history. My degree in college, etc., was history and music, and so I firmly believe in, if it's possible, giving back to the community. My wife and I now, we've been in this community for 18 years. We built a home here. We have a child who's gone through the school system. We have a vested interest in the community, and so I consider it an honor to be able to serve the community, and I'm looking forward to continuing, because as you folks know, and we have difficulty in this town getting people to run for office or to volunteer. So whether that's good or bad in terms of someone like myself who's up for re-election, yet I'm unopposed. As a history teacher, I was an advocate of term limits when I would be teaching government to my kids. I still am an advocate of term limits. I don't expect to be spending the rest of my life, whatever that may be, doing this, but I am truly enjoying working for the town, and I want to be able to continue this way. One of the things I wanted to say to the seniors, as I said, because I consider them my strongest supporters and partially why I'm on the board. This past year, I know has been a very disappointing year for you. All of your hard work in the 5 years that I've been on the board for the senior center. I've worked with several of you on committees, etc. I know all the work that was put in, and I know how disappointed you were, and I was equally disappointed. No matter what you may think about the Board of Selectmen, because I know there were mixed feelings, I have to tell you, we have an excellent board, and the board equally was disappointed that the senior center went down as it did. And so that I just wanted to bring that up to you, that I consider the seniors an important segment of the town. You're a very active segment. Most recently, I would point out to just last week on Memorial Day, what the seniors and Claudia, et cetera, did to organize it, the amount of veterans that showed up, the largest we've ever had, and so on. You are definitely a group that are doers. And even though this has not been a up year for you, I hope you will not just turn and walk away from it, from serving the community as you always have. You may not always have agreed with the way I voted, but I can honestly stand here and say to you that I voted as I truly believed was right at the time for the town and for the seniors. I have always had your backs, and I can say that without any reservation in debates, in our meetings and discussions, etc., anything having to do with the seniors. I have tried to always be a supporter for you, even though we may have disagreed at times in terms of how we wanted to get there. Another reason that I am seeking the office, besides enjoying it and learning a great deal, again, dealing from the seniors, I feel that, as I said, you're an important segment to the town, and as it is, I believe firmly that it's good and that you should have a seat at the table, so to speak. And that seat being right now the one I occupy on the Board of Selectmen. And I will continue to serve to the best of my abilities, and thank you again for your time and your support in the past years.
We're just going to use the mic so people at home can hear. So I think it's on.
No, it's not on.
All right, then we'll talk really loudly. Specifically, what will you be doing to help the board or committee in your next term of office?
Well, we have a lot of irons in the fire, and I'm hoping to see that, hopefully, that a lot of these are going to be developing in terms of the town improvement, etc. One of my strongest feelings when I first got on the board, and I still feel this way, even though it has been frustrating at times, is to hopefully get more businesses coming into town. I think it's one of the major needs of this town. We need revenue. I don't think anybody will deny that, and as long as I can work towards that, I will. I think that's very important, that we find additional forms of revenue. I noticed from last night at the town meeting, there was a lot of discussion in terms of those various solar farms, et cetera, and what we're having too many of them and so forth. It may be true and may not, but the other fact, and I was sitting there thinking, well, it is, but in the same sense, this is revenue for us. And we have a very limited source of revenue in this town, so that I think it's an argument why we have the solar farms that we do and what the money that's brought in. So I would continue to work along those lines.
Second question, what experience do you bring to the position that'll help increase the board's or committee's effectiveness?
Well, if 5 years as a selectman can count as experience, then I would say that's what I bring to it. I was a novice 5 years ago. I said I would hit the ground running, and I believe I have. I've learned a great deal, and I still have a lot more to learn. But I certainly feel that I have the 5 years experience on the board, so that I'm not behind the 8 ball.
Any questions from the audience?
state who I am?
You can?
Okay, thank you. Councilor Steiger, 65 Fieldville Road. First of all, thank you for not only being here on a day where you were unopposed, other people don't do that, which I think is really good. You've mentioned the attracting of businesses into town and the fact that, yes, we do have quite a lot of solar farms and it's a good cash revenue. What other types of businesses do you personally feel might be attracted or can be attracted into this town, number one? And a follow-up question to this here is what are the issues surrounding on how do we bring these businesses into this town? Meaning, what do we have to do as a town to enhance the way that Hubbardston can attract these businesses or such businesses?
As far as types of businesses, we are, the very nature of our town being the sense that we do not have like public services such as town water, limits us as to the kind of businesses that can settle here because you couldn't, for example, have a big restaurant or this or that, et cetera, just because of where everything's on a well here in this town. One of the strong criticisms I have made, and I stand on it for the last 5 years, is I have not felt that we have been that friendly towards getting businesses. And in the 5 years that I've been on the board, it's been disappointing. Those businesses that have come and tried to get in here have been turned around and they just walked away from us for various reasons. It's because at times they seem to have to walk through hoops and jump around. So I think we, as a town, all of the boards together, the planning board, the select board, etc., we've got to be a lot more proactive and go after them and make Hubbardston an attractive town to them, because it is an attractive town and it has a lot of things going for it. We have to do a better job selling it. But when they do come, I think we need to sell the idea that our arms are open to you, not closed. You know, the hand is here, we want you. Because I don't believe that that has been the case.
Thank you.
Oh, one other thing, if you were to ask my son, he wants a Dunkin' Donuts.
Who doesn't?
Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Williams.
I think the Dunkin' Donuts thing always comes up. Have you thought about the businesses in town that sell coffee that such a thing would hurt?
Oh. To your answer your question, yeah, I happen to go to a place downtown every single morning for breakfast, and the people are friends of mine, etc. But in the same sense, if it's a different enough business, my feeling is we need them. We should try to at least give them the opportunity if they want to come in. I'm not advocating putting anyone out of business, but I think we need to be big enough so that we can bring more businesses in, and if it means some of them are serving coffee, etc., or whatever, I wouldn't be against that. I personally don't think we can afford to turn people away who want to be here, you know? And I think we have done that. So.
Can you give an example? Tom Robinson. Can you give an example of someone that's been turned away?
Well, the two that come to mind had to do with the sand pits, okay, and then the gentleman, I'm trying to remember his name, he was out of Lunenburg. They basically made or make soils, etc., and things for playgrounds, etc., and all the materials would have been taken care of. There was nothing harmful that they were going to be doing. They just wanted to come in, settle here in town, and continue to do their business. And they were put through a lot of hoops, etc., and they finally went someplace else and did it. So this has been going on, and it's just frustrating.
When you say they were put through a lot of hoops, they never put anything on the table. They never put an application in, never were asked to step through any hoops.
Way to keep it to questions.
Yeah.
Well, what were the hoops?
Well, Tom, you and I both know that the discussion was held there. They came before the board, etc. So you know, I don't want to get into that. This is how I felt that they were treated, and so it motivates me.
First stand up.
Kirk Boysono, 8 Emer Lane. So, the select board and the planning board seem to be doing a lot of bickering lately. How do you, what's your opinion on resolving that for the betterment of the town going forward? I guess that's my question.
Well, I said it near the end of my speech. I think in terms of for this town to grow, for this town to continue to improve and to be open to bringing people in, the active boards, such as the select board and the planning board, both have got to be on the same page as that. If someone's knocking at the door, you got to let them in with an open hand, as I said, as opposed to giving them reason to think, well, I don't want to be here. And the select board and planning board are not always bickering. Okay. In the 5 years that I've been here, we've had about 4 town administrators. There's been a lot of politicking going on, a lot of things that I wasn't happy about, and unfortunately, it did set us at odds. And we've all tried to work around it, and we're still trying to do that. We're a small town, so that you need everybody to be on this. I think everybody has to be on the same page, or else I think one of the worst things that can happen here is if we stay the same. Because as we all know, if you've taken part in town government, state aid is not going up as far as what comes here. We get less. Yet the costs to run the town, the cost of education, etc., continue to go up. Well, what is not going up in this town is our revenue. And so you continue that, and you get in a lot of trouble. And so we need to get people and bring them in and welcome them and help them and do everything we possibly can to let them try to have a business here so that we can also benefit from it too. I think it's vital.
Thank you.
John Nason from the infamous Streeter Road.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
The argument I hear often about bringing business in the town is that it would destroy the unique rural community that we have here. I usually tell those people, go to Berlin, Mass, and go to Northborough, Mass. They both have 2 large shopping centers that have no impact on the aesthetic value of their towns because they're way off the road, up over a hill, and they can't be seen from the road. In Berlin, from Route 62, you wouldn't even know it was there if they didn't have signs up. And Northborough the same way on Route 20.
So we gotta keep it to questions, and you know I wouldn't interrupt you, but we're trying to keep it.
Well, I wanted to address that issue with people that fear development in town. And the sewerage, I'm not sure it's an issue. You have Market Basket, that's turning into a huge shopping area in Athol.
But John, to your point also, I think towns larger than us, because I've researched this a little bit myself, but I don't think we're in a position where we can afford it. They actually have a public relations representative their job is, the town is one of their clients, and they are actively trying to sell the town to businesses and everything, letting them know, hey, here we are, we're Hubbardston, this is what we've got, and so forth. I think it would be great if we could do something like that, but that costs money too. But that's what I mean by being proactive. I think we have to really go after them and not wait for them just necessarily to find us. Because I also think that the reputation we have is not that positive, and we need to change that.
Last one.
Thinking of you've expressed that the planning board is some kind of a gatekeeper that will allow or not allow something. Do you know how many businesses are allowed by right? Meaning they have the right to do it. You can't say no. How many types of businesses?
If you're asking me to give you chapter and verse, no, I don't.
Well, there's about 30 types of businesses written into our bylaws that are not subject to a gatekeeper.
Oh.
We're allowed by right.
Any additional questions?
I'd like to follow up on that one. Out of the 30, do you maybe know how many types of businesses how many businesses do we actually have here in town?
How many businesses?
Yes, or establishments do we have in town?
Oh.
Would you be surprised if that number is maybe around in the 60s?
Personally, yes, I would be, but depending upon what constitutes a business in terms of that. But
I mean, those are the statistics that have been,
well, I won't argue that.
yeah, not a lot,
You know,
to your point.
All right, any final statements?
I have
Nope.
another question. I have a question. In the last 20 years, how many businesses has planning board turned down?
In the last 20 years, I've only been here 18, and I've only been in government for 5.
Well, how many in the last 5?
In the last 5, I've already addressed the ones that I've seen, okay? The key ones that came before us did not stay, and they went someplace else, or they just walked away from us.
In the last 20 years, just so you know, of the businesses that have actually put an application in, one has been denied.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
Final statement?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. So as we stated, Jeff Williams is running. He's running with Pat Gerard for the 3-term. There's 2 positions available, so technically an uncontested election. So the next position, and the point of that is I really appreciate people who are running unopposed or in what we would call uncontested come and answering questions and talking about the direction of the town. I really appreciate it. At the end, I'll give my pitch to everyone for volunteering for many of these open positions that we see here that we'd like to fill with good quality Hubbardston candidate and talent. So next we have Catherine Saab from the Board of Health, going 3-year term. Is one of 2 positions.
Nice to meet you, by the way.
Nice to meet you.
All right. I speak a little quietly, so if you guys have trouble hearing me at any point, just raise a hand.
Try the mic.
Try the mic. Is that better?
That's for TV.
It doesn't seem like it's on. Anyway, I'll project. So my name's Kate. I came to Hubbardston a couple of years ago. Have a couple of friends in town, had been coming to town often, visiting. Finally decided, we should just move to Hubbardston and just, stop the drive all the way from Holden, not that far. Try it now. How about now? No. How about now? Nope. Can you hear me now?
We're just testing you.
It's all right. I actually volunteered for the Board of Health, prompted by Kathy from the Ladybug Farm, who's a friend. And she said, we need volunteers, and you're a techie, and we need people who are technical. My background as an IT director, I'm a data architect. So my job is fixing processes and building databases, which I won't bore you with because it is not exciting for anybody but me. But my hope is to help in that regard. I know when we hired the town clerk, not the town clerk, I'm sorry, Kelly, our clerk, she is awesome. But, we looked at all these resumes and I said, she knows processes and she knows analytics and she knows Excel because she was a commerce insurance business analyst. And when I worked at Fallon, I hired those people every day as much as I could because I knew they had good training. And she's worked out really well. So I've been working with her to kind of streamline things, look at processes, find out where there's things that aren't working. Like, when I look at a Board of Health or anything like that, and I see a process that has 12 steps and we're not sure what it is, and we're trying to guide people coming in from the outside as to that process to build a house, get a perk test, get a septic, get water tested, build a business, whatever that is, it looks to me that there's a lot of room for improvement, and just having those processes clear and being transparent. And even if that means working with another board and saying this is where our processes intersect, what can we do to help each other to make this easier and more efficient? So that's my background. That's kind of what I hope to do. I will be, if I'm elected, going through an orientation process with the Massachusetts Board of Health, at the end of the month in Devons, and then, you know, kind of learning things from there. So I'll be a backup for Bill and Kathy for inspections once I get certified, and grow into the role in that way. But my hope is to initially help with process. So, questions? I know you would.
So just specifically, what will you do, or what can you do to help the board or committee
Yep.
succeed?
So really just bring a different perspective, I guess. You know, one of the things I wanted to do, since you've been hired, is meet with you and find out more about the town itself and how we approach things from a technological perspective to see what we could already leverage. I've been working with Kelly to kind of help her get established and create processes that are repeatable, that don't mean she's manually wasting her time doing the same things over and over. So helping more in that way.
The second question is, what experience you bring that'll help improve the effectiveness of the Board of Health?
Yep. So my experience as an IT director, oddly enough, helps. Before that, so before I came to information systems, I started life as a social worker. So I have a degree in cultural education, and I learned how people acquire knowledge through their own personal culture. And what that means is that I'm really gifted at designing processes and workflows and systems that people can work with based on their role in the world. So, you know, listening to the planning board say, you know, we'd like to attract more business. You know, we might not need a person to go out and be that handshaking person. It may be as simple as saying, you know what, we're super efficient and really easy to deal with as a town, and this is how we're going to prove that. And that might be enough, right? Because in this day and age, if you're not online, if you don't have an online form presence, if I have to print a form, fill it out, and drive to an office to deliver it, it's not going to happen quickly. You know, if I can fill it out online, send it directly, and then send payment with it, and then have a phone call, way more efficient. So it's looking at the world that way that I think I can bring to the role.
Great. I'll open up to the floor if there's any questions from the side.
Nope.
Just a quick comment
Sure.
and a follow-up question with this here. It's very refreshing to hear that you were basically providing perspective of openness in terms of what the process needs to be and how it should be followed, so that people know and don't have to jump through hoops. Do you feel like that at this point? What sort of improvements does the current system you think need in order to be more effective as such?
Right. So the current system, so I know the Board of Health specifically is dealing with a little bit of what, you know, I would call technical debt, right? So years of manual processes that were held in people's minds, where somebody was an expert at that thing and understood the process. And it was a manual process that has lots of steps and lots of possibility for failure, right? So any one of the processes I've heard about, I couldn't even pinpoint one because they're all a little bit like that, have that kind of riddled with possible failure. So when we switched to using Kelly, there was a gap there, and there was a lack of somebody managing that process in the interim. The chair was doing a very good job trying to keep up with all of that, and the rest of the board members were helping as much as we could. But I can tell you that if you have manual processes that aren't documented in any way, they're not transparent, they're not streamlined, over time, you know, if I'm in a 3-year term, or if I get hit by a bus walking down Main Street because there's no sidewalk, right, then there's a problem. So I think it's all of them. You know, I think it's looking at them all with fresh eyes and saying, okay, how do we make these work? You know, building a house, if you're a landowner and you're building a house in town, you're going to be contributing revenue. You're going to be contributing tax dollars. You're improving a piece of land. Why do we make it, you know, so difficult to go through all of the steps? They have to interact with each of the boards at some point, and that's right. That's what they should do. But we can do what we can to make it a process that is straightforward and transparent, so that from A to Z, they understand exactly what it is they need to do. And we have the information we need to make good decisions and make good laws around that, and be able to legislate around those issues that come up.
Are you therefore proposing to put together a list of things that any business or any person, for example, wants to build something here in town, knows what it is, what the criteria are that they have to follow in order to be able to, at the end,
Ultimately,
if
yes.
everything has been followed, that they know exactly what it is that they need to do, and then be able to be granted whatever permissions they have to
Right, it's still within the right of whatever board to permit or not
applaud
permit.
that, thank you.
But I think that
that's very refreshing.
transparency and consistency of process is what's going to help us kind of carry into the future. Doesn't mean everything is going to be, you know, on a tablet or automated or computerized. It's just, you know, looking at things and making it so that it works. You know, we put in place simple things as a group already. You know, we use a group email, pretty simple. When we're doing scheduling for, you know, a perk or a inspection for a restaurant or a business, you know, we get a group email. This needs to be scheduled. Somebody raises their hand, schedules it. If we centralize that, and we gave access, let's say, to specific members of other boards that intersected with the process at that point, they could then know, oh, you know what? They just got this piece of that process done. That's a flag for me to pick up on this part of the process for me. So it's simple things like that.
Thank you.
Not changing the world. Hi, Ed.
Thank you for running. It's nice to see someone so enthusiastic about the Board of Health. Thanks for getting involved.
And I should note, my
That's not a question.
Just put a question mark at the end. Thanks for running.
so
Are you happy he asked the question?
I was happy. And about, so the whole septic and not having a well system or having wells and not having public. My father works in Methuen as an excavator. My brother's a civil engineer. So I understand more than people want to know about sewer, wells and septics because I was raised in a company doing that for a living. So I understand what they're like. I do need to go through certifications to be able to do inspections. But, you know, I can look at a plan and actually interpret it. So that's another random skill fact from my background.
I have a question about the inspection process.
Mm-hmm.
It's my understanding that members of the Board of Health aren't allowed to do inspections. It's like a conflict of interest.
We do inspections for restaurants,
Right.
and we do inspections for septic as well.
How do you feel about a regionalized inspector for doing inspections?
If it was a benefit to the town and it was regionalized in a way where the information was transparent, the process was good, I would have no problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know specifically if it's a conflict, if there's no business interest per se. You know, we're individual citizens who are volunteering and doing an inspection based on training we're given by the state. So I don't see a conflict there. However, if it was a regional position and something that could benefit, like we could benefit from that and make it more streamlined, I'd be all for that.
Mm-hmm. I do think it's a conflict.
In what way?
Members of the board do inspections. I mean, I'm pretty sure the town has not allowed that. It was
No,
either the
it's-
clerk or another town inspector.
Right now we're talking questions for the Board of Health candidate.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, in terms of the process, it's, to my knowledge, they do inspections, so.
Okay. I'm not
it's something we monitor.
clear on that.
According to your April 10th, 2018 meeting minutes, Lucinda Oates says there's concerns with inspections. 3 years ago, the town passed a law saying Board of Health members cannot do inspections. And I believe that's accurate. I'd highly recommend that be allowed, that be dealt with. How would you plan to deal with it?
I guess we'd have to work with the town administrator and see if there was a third party that could be, you know, enrolled, or, you know, if there's a specific group that does that within the state. We'd have to find that out. I'm not aware. When were those minutes?
April 10th, 2018.
Yep. So it's something we'd have to deal with. I wasn't aware of that. Any other questions?
Any additional questions?
Nope.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
All right, that was good. I'm glad she's not running for town administrator. All right, next. Next, we're going to move on to the trustees of the public library. And before we introduce the people, I just want to remind anyone watching or in the crowd that there is a ballot question next Tuesday, the 12th, for the Hubbardston Library roof. It is the only ballot question on the on the docket. So in addition to these great candidates, you'll be able to vote for whether or not there will be a capital outlay exclusion for the Hubbardston Library roof. All right, we're going to go in alphabetical order. So first up, candidate for re-election for a 3-year term, one of 2 positions, Tom Robbins.
Thank you. Thanks for making this happen tonight. Thanks to the seniors. And a special thanks to the Community Preservation Committee for providing the funding for the 3 major projects in town, the library being one of them. I think they had a difficult task in front of them to allocate the money fairly and appropriately, and I think they did a very good job. The library building is the beneficiary of that. If you were there last night, you heard that the CPC was able to provide $130,000 for the new roof, and Tuesday you'll be voting on a, I call it a debt exclusion, but what did you call it?
It's capital outlay exclusion, it's the same.
Okay, a debt exclusion,
1-year capital item.
which says you'd pay about $5 a month for 12 months, and we'll pay for the balance of the effort needed to complete the roof project. So we're really pretty excited as library trustees. We're really pretty excited about getting the roof returned to its original condition. But as a candidate, you should know something about my background, perhaps. A long time ago, I was a library trustee. And have been for about the last 5 years, but I was a library trustee back when we did some other renovations. More recently, I was on the school building committee when we did the renovation and addition on the school, and that was pretty challenging. We had contractors going out of business and whatnot, and we made it through that project, and I think the school came out very, very good. And I'm proud of that, and I can't stand here and take credit because there were some people that really did a great job. Sue Flagg, Ed Leonard, Karen DeFranza, Kevin DeMoro, and I hope I haven't forgotten anybody. But the main contributor was Joan Paula, who was the principal of the school at that time. And she really watched this project day by day. And so more recently, I've been on the planning board about 5 years. And I've been on the library trustees for about 3 to 4 years. We've done some smaller projects, asbestos removal and floor sanding and painting and fixing windows and whatnot, and also repairing the roof in a temporary fashion a couple times. The floor project was very interesting. We brought the floor down to its original wood surface. It was heartwood pine, not hardwood, but heartwood pine. And those trees were probably growing, if you do the math, those trees were probably growing when the Declaration of Independence was signed. So that's quite a floor. When you walk in there, take a look at it. It really adds a nice warmth to the building, and we're also proud of that project. As I mentioned, the next big challenge is the roof. This project will return the roof to its original architect's configuration, complete with some little color banding, and it'll match the roof on that tower configuration. And I think when we're all done, it'll look really well, and it'll function really well. I really have to, of course, mention good old Jonas Clark, who contributed the whole building. And in 1875 or 1873, maybe, he was sitting around with his architect, and he was making decisions. He made the decision to use brick. He made the decision for granite on the lintels and over the windows and arched windows and slate roofs. And he really made it a first-class building. I think the town should. Myself, what I bring to the party is my background is engineering and project management. I've been in worker bee roles, working as an engineer, but I've also been in executive roles and project management roles on projects that are tens of millions of dollars. And They were very interesting, big projects, but all projects have similar elements, and I think that experience is directly applicable to helping out on projects for the town. How'd I do?
22 seconds left. Very good.
Vote yes, Tuesday.
I think you touched on the experience question, what you bring to the board, unless you wanted to add more, but what will you do to help the board and committee for your next term specifically?
Well, I think we have a great board, and you know, because I'm running, I'm talking about myself, but there's 4 other members and a really great director. I think we work well together. I think I bring some different things, some things that are not in the possession or not in the skill base of the other people, but likewise, they bring some things that I don't have. And I think the secret is to work together as a team, and that's what I would strive to do in the future. 2 more things. I want to keep the interest of the town first and foremost, and I want to do the public's business in public. That's my theme.
Any questions from the audience? Anyone at home?
Any call-ins?
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks very much, and thanks
Appreciate
for
it.
making this happen tonight.
All right, our next candidate, and I practice saying this, is Connie Strittmatter. I said it right? Yes. Okay. Also running for one of the 3-year terms of trustees of the public library.
I just want to thank you all for taking time and coming out today. I am relatively new to Hubbardston. I moved here about 2 years ago, so I'm only really starting to get to know faces and people in the town. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time letting you know more about me and kind of what I can bring as a library trustee to the public library. So I did move here about 2 years ago. And after being here for about a year, I really wanted to start thinking about how I could kind of give back to the town, because living in a smaller town, I think it's important that the citizens contribute. And so about a year in, I happened to see that there's an opening for the library trustee position, which happens to work very well because I am a librarian, and I've been a librarian for 17 years. So it was kind of a natural fit for me to apply. So I was appointed to the position last year for a 1-year vacancy. And so now it's time for me to kind of go through the whole formal election process and kind of truly be elected. I grew up in Pennsylvania. I got my library degree from Kent State University. And after getting my MLS, I moved to Arizona. And I worked at Arizona State University Law Library for about 6 years. While I was there, I got my MBA. And then the heat in Arizona got a little too much for me. So I decided to jump ship and I moved to Montana, which is the complete opposite. So I moved to the mountains, into the colder area, and I lived in Bozeman and I worked at Montana State University for about another 7 years. So after being out west for 13, I was kind of ready to kind of move back east because my parents and sister in Pennsylvania and my younger sister is in Attleboro. So I moved here 5 years ago. So over the course of the last 16 or 17 years, I've held various different positions in the library. So while my experience is probably more academic rather than public, I do have an understanding of how libraries work, and I think that's something I can help bring to the Library Board of Trustees. As far as areas of strength go, I really am an operations and logistics person, so I do a lot of planning, and that's kind of where I excel. My secondary strengths are in strategy. So as far as what I can do on the Board for Trustees, if you need somebody to get work done and plan something out, I'm the person to do it, and I can help get it done. I mean, you need to sit down and think about strategy for the futures. I can definitely help with that as well. Currently, I work at Fitchburg State University, and so I'm the public services librarian there. And so what that means is that I do a variety of work. I do sysadmin work, so I do work on back end of systems, of some library systems. But my primary role is to do community programming and library programming and be the outreach person for the university library to the Fitchburg and surrounding communities. So to that end, I put together several different types of programs that I offer to the library and reach out to the broader community. And I also do, with that, I've been doing some grant writing, so trying to bring some grants into the library so we can do programming as well. That is something that I'll be able to do once we pass the Debt Exclusion Act and put the new roof on the library. we will then be able to write a grant to try and get some reimbursement funds that will be able to help out with that. So I just want to thank you for taking time and letting me talk to y'all, and happy to take any questions that you might have. And I really do hope that, we hope you put a checkbox beside my name on Tuesday, but I really, really hope that you vote yes for the new library roof. It's something that we really do need, not only for the library, but for the town offices, and really to preserve the artifacts and historical documents that are housed by the Hubbardston Historical Society that we keep on the third floor. Thank you.
Good. So again, you hit on your experience and what you're bringing, especially Master of Librarian Services. Pretty good.
Yeah.
How are you going to help the board or the trustees
Sure.
moving forward?
Sure. So, so I kind of mentioned we would probably be working on the grant, so we can try and get the reimbursement funds for the roof. But one of the things the library doesn't currently have right now is a strategic plan, and we really do need to get a strategic plan in place because it'll make us eligible to apply for grants through the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. And so we can't, there are a lot of great programming that we could apply for, but we can't do it without a strategic plan. So that would be one area that I think we would want to definitely start working towards.
Any questions from this side?
I'm Ed Blanchard, nice to meet you.
Thank you.
With the advent of technology, it has changed the use of libraries considerably. How would you see integrating technology with our library, and what changes do you see that what might happen at our library due to that?
Right. So I mean, so if we're going to start putting in technology into the library, it's going to require certainly an investment in some funds to do that, right? We do have wireless in the library right now, so that is a start, right? Right now we have one computer, and it's a sad little computer. I used it the other day. It took probably like 20 minutes for it to boot up. But that could be something we could look at, is like, how can we maybe add maybe more computers, so we can maybe help bring people in who maybe are job seeking, right? And don't have a computer at home or might not have access to the internet, that they would have a resource that they could use, right? Maybe we could look at ways to bring in like iPads, right? And maybe we can do some interesting programming with children's, and doing some children's programming, or have children maybe be able to utilize an iPad and understand how some of those technologies start working, or create like a technology petting zoo where we can. That would be an interesting program, right? Is to bring in different types of devices and have people come in and experiment with them. You know, maybe you bring in a 3D printer, right? And you bring in, other types of things, and then you could have people just experiment with them so they can learn more about them. So, I love it.
Can you expand a little bit about the reimbursement grants that you're talking about?
Sure.
Specifically, where are these grants reached from? Second is, once they do come in, if they do come in, would that stay with the library? And if so, how would that be then utilized potentially in your mind in order to enhance the library programs?
Okay. So I can probably answer the first part of that question. I think I know the answer to the second part, but I'll probably be deferring to you a little bit on this. So the roof right now, the roof costs $233,000. Okay, so we got the $133,000 from the Conservation Preservation Committee, who kind of gave us the money. The other $100,000 is through the debt exclusion that we're going to be voting on next Tuesday. So when approved, right, we will then be able to go to the Massachusetts Historical Commission, and they have a preservation fund, and we can apply for a grant. Now, the idea with this grant is that we have to have the money up front because it's a reimbursement grant. So we have to have the cost of the roof, I think, plus maybe like another 25% in contingency, to demonstrate to them that this roof is going to happen, right? And then once the roof is on, then they will be able to give us a partial reimbursement. So, and depending on it's unclear how much they will give us. I feel like we can be pretty competitive because Hubbardston has not applied for a grant based on the last few years of awardees that I've looked at. It does not look like Hubbardston's applied for one in the past several years. And when I look at the list, we see a lot of the same cities kind of showing up. So I think that will be one thing that works in our favor. Because we're putting the slate roof on, we're restoring the building to its original state. That is also going to help us a lot in applying for the grant. So that is the reimbursement grant that we would be applying for through the Massachusetts Historical Commission. Now, if we get the grant, my understanding is that the town will officially be applying for the grant. If we do receive the grant, I'm guessing the money's gonna come back into the free cash flow.
Money would go in turn eventually into free cash for reappropriation or savings by the town.
So it would not necessarily come to the library where we would do.
So therefore then I would go to the second part, which is the other grants that you are talking and looking to potentially apply.
Right.
I think you already touched upon the types of things that you could potentially leverage and utilize. I would like to follow that one up by asking you the potential integration of the library with the school system here. Can you expand a little bit in terms of how that is taking place and how those grants could be utilized and maybe even enhancing the education that is existing within the school system that we have here in Hubbardston?
I don't know how much I will be able to adjust that.
It's blue sky here.
So my understanding is that there's not a library at the Hubbardston Central School. Is that correct?
I will second that. I believe that's correct.
Okay, I believe that's correct. So,
I haven't seen one.
okay.
I believe it would be more accurate to say we don't have a library.
Okay,
Because
so-
we have a room.
So there might be a
that's
room with books, right? We have to keep in mind when we're thinking about collaborating with the school, and it's a great endeavor and it's a really altruistic goal to have. But we also have to keep in mind staffing as well, right? That Hubbardston Public Library does have limited staffing, so it's hard to expand out too much without adding additional human capital to it. But you could potentially have maybe the school come to the public library, have them get library cards, check out books. Jane maybe would be able to maybe do some program or maybe some introductions to information literacy, so teaching them how to search the catalog, maybe teaching them how to find books or maybe how to do like preliminary research on the databases. So that could be a role, but I don't want to speak for Jane, 'cause that would stretch her a lot, and so that would be.
Understood. The reason I'm bringing this up, and I will finish that up with a question, is because you did mention some very interesting aspects, which I really appreciate and like. I mean, the fact that you're looking at technology to like a 3D printer and things of that nature, which is not necessarily something that folks here are necessarily always exposed. And so, do you have a background or a ability to explain how you've been exposed to some of these alternative ways in which libraries can sometimes introduce technology into the environment?
How it can be introduced?
Yes, I mean, you mentioned, for example, 3D printing,
Right.
which I think is a very ingenious. I happen to see many of them at
Right.
Northeastern University where I was.
Right. So my experience into it has just come from working in different places, right? So prior to being at Fitchburg State, I was at Boston College, and so a university with a lot of resources. So we had a 3D printer in our library that we were able to, to play with, right? We had a digital technology center where we were able to have software, and for video creation and such and so forth. So I think a lot of my exposure to it has just been through working in different places.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Are they really beating you up?
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to take just a quick moderator's privilege. Interesting fact about Library Board of Trustees, how important it is. By charter in Hubbardston, it's not under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen or the town administrator. So they administer and most of that has to do with state funding of the library. So very important positions. They run that department in that section of the town. A lot of people don't know that. Also, just to address a debt exclusion is when you take on debt, right? So it's a Prop 2.5 override to take debt on over a long term, mostly for a building or a larger project. The capital outlay exclusion is for 1 year, which is what the library is. So we're not taking on debt, we're raising and appropriating that one time to pay for the roof if it passes. So that's the difference, it's just a technicality. And I like civics, so just took a little privilege there. All right, the last position we have is our only contested position. This is for the planning board. This is a 5-year term. There's one position. We have 2 candidates running, as I mentioned earlier. So we're going to go in alphabetical order and follow the same rules. The reason why I'm limiting to questions and not comments is just to make it fair for everybody and to keep things flowing. I'm not trying to be mean. So first, we're going to start off with Bill Homans.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming out of your houses tonight, and thanks to everybody at home if anybody's watching. I'm running for the planning board. I've been here, unfortunately, I have to say 60-plus years. I grew up here in town across the street. My name here was Joe's Boy because my father was the postmaster, and I was known as Joe's Boy as I went down the street. And that lasted for many years. I think the only people that have more time in town is either Claudia or Tom. And I don't recall the numbers here, but they've been...
I met you when you were about 12.
I thought it was younger. I'm a retired State Department of Corrections prison officer. I'm a retired police officer here in town. I've been on the fire department growing up. I was in the Boy Scouts in Hubbardston, Troop 12. I'm on the Board of Assessors up until next week when we have the election. I've been on that board elected 3 years. On the Zoning Board of Appeals for over 30 years. I'm the president of the Pinecrest Property Owners Association. I've been involved with a lot of different projects over the years, and it very many times when the town of Hubbardston needed anything, police, fire, or highway department, they would push the tones on the fire monitors to get enough people to go to the town meeting to vote. And that's the only way that we could actually get a debt exclusion to buy anything. The same thing happens when they want to do a senior center police fire station. People in this town don't vote to raise their taxes. I strongly believe we need to look at business to come into Hubbardston that could be good to keep our rural character and keep everything the same way it is in the same country that I grew up with. I don't want to lose that. I don't want solar farms everywhere either because you lose your woods with solar farms. They're good to a certain extent. I think we need to aggressively go out and look for businesses like I said before, like Athol did, and they've got a wonderful place over there and they've got a nice mall going up. And they have their own water. And a restaurant could go in Hubbardston if we actually approach these people to come into our town and start new businesses. We could help them put in water and sewage systems for themselves, or like they did at the pizza place. They don't have city water and sewage there, and that's a restaurant. We could do that. I really believe that boards need to work together within the town. There's not a lot of communications. If people disagree, that's okay. We have the right to disagree, but we need to leave it there, leave it at the table, and move on from that. And I strongly believe that. I believe that we need to follow the rules and go forward with everything. We need to bring new things for our town to give our seniors what they need, give our children and ourselves. We only have so much time to do this, and I don't think we should be remembered to be the way we were 60 years ago. The town of Hubbardston hasn't come up all that much. I've seen a lot of changes, but we're still living within the constraints of all our tax base is from residential homes. We don't really have that many. It was said we have 60 businesses, but there's not 60 taxable businesses, I believe, like the diner and the pizza place and the food mart and Mr. Mike's. We don't have a lot of those in this town. I'd like to see that change. As long as we stay within what the people of Hubbardston on the survey said they wanted and what we should be doing. I believe we should update our master plan and where we're going to go forward and how we're going to stay in compliance with that and do what's right with Hubbardston. Maybe do another survey to see what folks want. How am I doing?
Next time. Are we good?
I think my experience on all these different boards gives me a good basis and a good overview where I could help other boards. I've been involved with a lot of different projects here. I'm on the Board of Health, newly appointed, and then everybody left the board. We kind of got dumped on, but we're slowly moving on and learning the aspect of the job, and thank God for Kate. She's really offered already just bringing technology to the board, which helps out a lot. And we are trying to, and I think the whole town should do this, we need to bring more technology into line with the town of Hubbardston. Like was said earlier tonight, we should have free Wi-Fi when you come into the town buildings. So people are sitting in a meeting here, if they don't like what I'm saying, they can play on their phones. But it should be free, and we should be able to do that and keep everything secure and separated. But I think we should move up into the times like that. And that isn't really all that expensive to do. I think we need to be transparent, honest, keep our integrity in place for the town of Hubbardston. That's how I was brought up. Mom was a school teacher, Dad was a postmaster. If I didn't do that, the guy coming up the street would kick my butt, and then he'd go tell my dad. And I believe strongly in that. That's something that's we teach our kids there, and I believe in that. And I'm all set.
All right, great. So, I'm gonna ask you some questions.
Sure.
Specifically, what will you do to help the planning board?
I think I bring my experience. I learned in prison, one of our favorite sayings was, not that I lived there, I worked there. I learned that the saying that we had for a lot of folks that came in there, we're in the business of people helping people. I think that should be the motto for everybody in Hubbardston, all the boards. We're here to help each other. We're not here to be in control of anything. Let's help each other get to where they want to go. That helps us and it helps them. I think that's really important.
Okay, and then you talked about your experience, but specifically, what experience do you bring to the position that'll help on the planning board if you're elected?
I think as far as the planning board, I think my experience in a lot of different aspects that I did in all my careers, I have a lot of, in the planning aspects for the State Department of Corrections, I ran a lot of different projects for those folks. I was the first state fire safety officer and managed all those things. I think with the planning board and talking with a lot of the old timers like Mac May and Mike Capuccio and Paul Araldi, all that, I'd have to go to training to learn the legal aspects of it, like I did for the Board of Assessors, and I'll have to update myself on any of the old pertinent codes on that. But I want to bring my experience and my personality to the board, and I want to move the board forward. And I think we all should have term limits. Some of us have been on the boards too long, and I think it's a good thing where we have a turnover, new ideas come in, and I think that helps. The biggest problem in this town, which happens in most communities, most people don't volunteer. It's only a small handful of people that do everything. And I think it gets overwhelming sometimes, and I think we need to turn over and maybe go to a different board and get a different perspective of things. It really helps out. It kind of helps you relax a little bit.
I'll open up for questions from the audience.
Tom?
It's unclear to me exactly how many boards and jobs you have in town.
Oh, I have too many. I gave up a couple of them to be here tonight.
What do you have? What are your roles and what are your jobs in town?
What do I have?
What boards? What?
First of all, I'm retired.
employment and-
Like you, I'm retired. And I'm on the Board of Appeals, which we meet, the Zoning Board of Appeals. We meet once in a while. We went like 3 years, we didn't have any meetings because nobody was, didn't have to appeal anything. I'm on the Board of Health. I just got on there. I got coerced to go onto that board. And I'm in the Pinecrest Property Owners Association. We meet once a month. And hopefully the planning board. I gave up the Board of Assessors because I thought it would be too much. So, does that answer your question, Tom?
Aren't you also a policeman?
I'm retired, yes, and I work details sometimes. When they come around, unfortunately not very often. And being a retired officer, I'm at the bottom of the heap, so I get them when nobody else wants them. So this year I'll probably get maybe one a week, if I'm lucky.
Would it be fair to say that you're well known in the town?
Yes, sir. I've been around too long.
Can you tell us what inspires you to run for this role?
I believe my experience and I love town of Hubbardston, I always have. I think being a part of this town my whole life, I think it's important. I tell everybody you have to get involved, and I try to persuade people to run for boards so we don't have the same people all the time trying to do everything. It is too much, and then our society does not do that anymore. Like most folks stay home and with the technology, they don't come out of their homes. Very hard to get people to volunteer. But I do think we need to turn over and change things every once in a while. You got to open a new chapter. Did that answer your question?
Mr. Burke.
Mr. Ritchie's brought in over $500,000 a year into town for revenues through different things he's been doing through the years. How do you plan on what do you plan on doing to try to bring more revenue into town, considering the town accountant has told us if they build 3 million square feet of commercial space in town, it'll only bring about $15,000 a year.
Well, I would hope we could get on the same line that most communities do, that do bring the businesses in, and they do bring in a lot of capital for the town. And as far as what Benny's brought in over the past, I'd love to live up to that reputation and do that for the town of Hubbardston. but I would rely on the other board members to help out with that, because they do have the experience. I don't think the direction that we're going now, I don't agree with solar farms. I think they're great, we have some, but I don't think we should cover the town of Hubbardston with solar farms. I think there's other things we can look at, like maybe a mall on the side of town or something with the gravel pits, and I don't know. I would like to sit on the board and get their thoughts and ideas of that, which I haven't had the opportunity to sit with you folks. But I think we can move into a different direction, or maybe settle to what we have now and look in other areas to bring other ideas and more and other capital in the town of Hubbardston.
Just a follow-up question. What percentage of Hubbardston is, how much revenue is do we get from commercial property in Hubbardston? What percentage?
Approximately 4%.
Is that equal to other towns? Is that lower than other towns?
I couldn't tell you. I haven't researched that.
It's actually higher than most towns, just so you know, in central Massachusetts.
Really?
Additional questions?
You mentioned communications. I don't know what you meant by that.
Personally, I like to see the boards work together better. A lot of times in the boards with the building inspector or the board of assessors or the zoning, nobody knows what everybody's doing, or the planning board. Nobody knows what anybody else is doing. Our communication in this town has always been poor. I know that. That's a fact. I'd like to see that change. I think we should all work together, and maybe Kate could help with technology, or maybe we could look elsewhere, but make it so we're all on the same page, so we all know what the other ones are doing and what they're working on. So, like, if something comes up and it's over here and I'm looking at it, you're already looking at it there, that could save some work, and make us more productive, and make it easier for folks that are coming in for information.
Two-part question. One is,
Start with the first part.
all right. Good idea. I've been on the planning board for about 5 years, 4 years, 5 years. I don't believe I've ever seen you at a planning board meeting.
That's
Have
not
I?
the question.
Is that a requirement,
Have
Tom?
I ever seen you at a planning board meeting?
Is that a requirement, Tom?
No, but you talk about communications so that one board knows what the other board's doing. You're on board.
Well, I don't wanna get into discussion here with you,
I don't
Tom.
want a back and forth. We'll have a question and an answer, and we can do a follow-up question.
Of all the decisions the planning board has made in the last 5 years when I've been there, which one do you disagree with, and what would you do about it?
Well, I'm not gonna get up in front of these folks on TV to discuss all your decisions you've made, Tom. That's not the point here, not the point of me being here. And on the other side of that question, how many Board of Appeals or a Board of Assessors or any of the other boards have you come to?
I'm
So,
not gonna allow that either.
okay.
You can't ask questions. of me.
Okay, I don't wanna go there. But the bottom line is, I wanna get on the board to maybe process a new change on the direction and how the board is perceived in town, and go that route.
Would it be fair to say that you are running because you have roots, family, and ancestors who have not only been in here in Hubbardston, but you have a good relationship with individuals who are also here in Hubbardston, and that you have heard and understand that there are concerns with the way that the planning board is being run?
Yes, sir. That's
Is
why
that
I
why
was
you're
asked,
running?
I was asked by numerous people to please run.
Thank you. I think that answers the question.
Any additional questions for Mr. Holmans?
I would like just to point out one
Question?
piece of,
It's a
it's a question, and it will be addressed to you, that you can also say that you don't have the answer. Do you know that the current tax levy here on businesses in Hubbardston, at least as of 2017, is, as a matter of fact, one of the lowest ones of the surrounding communities and areas that we have here, unlike what the gentleman in the back said. If you compare it to towns like Barry, Templeton, Phillipston, as a matter of fact, the percentages are much, much lower. You're probably only ahead of Quinston, which is a very, very rural community. Are you aware of that?
No, sir, I'm not.
Thank you.
Additional questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
I like everyone in the room very much. Just trying to keep order. That's all.
Thank you.
I'm not used to this role. All right, so our final candidate for re-election, also going for the planning board, 5-year term. This one position is available, Mr. Vin Ritchie.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you all folks for coming this evening. I'd like to particularly thank Claudia and the Council of Aging for sponsoring this event. And luckily we have live TV, so everybody doesn't have to come out like we...
Right here, though.
Excuse me?
So they can see you. I'm
Oh,
not
they
trying to
can't
interrupt
see
your
me?
flow.
Oh, I'm sorry. I always want to be seen. But we have a lot of fun at these events, and we had a lot of fun last night, and it's very refreshing to have these types of situations where we can go in there and express our thoughts, to give out the ideas that we have, and to make changes. And particularly I want to thank Bonnie Cunningham for her efforts last year at last year's town meetings that made a very significant change in this town. And that change is sitting right here, because without Bonnie's efforts last year, we wouldn't have turned the corner that we have this year. We have a very professional, very intelligent, very well-versed young man who is, I think, going to lead our town forward in a much different way than we've ever seen. The bickering, the petty politics is over with this gentleman. He's straightforward. He's a straight shooter. He's a good soldier, if I may. And
Talking about Tom?
I'm really happy to I'm really happy to have him aboard. And so many of us in this room have been participating over the years, and I've served on the planning board for close to 20 years with many of you. And it's always been a privilege, and one of the things that I really have enjoyed is serving on the board with Hubbardston residents who have always made decisions with one overriding, if you will, thought in mind, and that is what's going to be the best for this town. There has, in my opinion, been virtually no self-centered, self-interest type of situations that I am aware of. The people who I've served with have just always adhered to that principle, and I think Hubbardston's a really good town because of it. We've looked at the fact that we are what we are. We're a small, rural community. We sometimes overlook the real benefits of this town. The fact that we have an outstanding police department that's very dedicated to us, a fire department that works really hard, a highway department that's again making great strides forward in what we want them to do. And yet, we're still small. And yet, in spite of the ideas of having industrial parks, in spite of the ideas of not having shopping malls, we have surrounded by towns, 4 or 5, that have industrial parks, that have shopping malls. Little does many of us know that we have a lower tax rate in those communities that have these things that some people believe are beneficial. We also, because of the way we run our town, end up in the lowest third of the taxable communities in this state. We're doing very well in terms of that, and yet we run efficiently, we run with a lot of pride, and I think the community has done very well. And I'm happy to have been a part of that. And I don't want to take credit for this $500,000 worth of revenue that I think Tom is mentioning to us, because that was a effort of the committee to write the bylaws that were progressive and to assert ourselves in ways that do things in a responsible manner. The solar farms, for instance. Alternative energy. We can't deny alternative energy needs to be addressed. Solar farms was a way to do that. It turned out to be not only beneficial to the environment, not only beneficial to our town in terms of how it maintains our rural character, because quite frankly, the solar farms are not that terribly visible. And finally, it turns out to be a benefit in the revenue. If you look at it objectively, you find that we only have impacted 1/4 of 1% of the gross area of this town with solar farms.
1 minute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He's trying to be.
1/4 of 1% of the area of this town takes in solar farms. and yet it gives us some of the advantages that we don't have. It's a much better revenue source than a subdivision. It's a much better use of land than a subdivision, and it gives citizens of the town the option to utilize their land the way they may feel they want to use it. You know, it's been an interesting exercise serving with Tom Collier on the Economic Development Committee that we did a few years ago, that was coming up with an idea that I believe Tom had to look at Hubbardston and brand it. Brand it so that we have a unique characteristic to sell to people who want to come. Because quite frankly, Hubbardston runs on families. And the way it runs is with small family businesses that come to town because they want to enjoy what we have here. They want to enjoy the quality and the environment and the privacy that we all enjoy. What do I have to do now?
Say thank you and
Oh, thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. And if you would, please send a vote my way on the town election next week. Thank you very much.
So I've been asking these same basic questions to everyone who came tonight and was brave enough to speak. So, been on the board for a while. Moving forward, specifically, what will you do to help the planning board or the community?
Well, working forward, I have a very strong desire to continue with enlightened, if you will, types of bylaws and decisions that is going to establish and strengthen our communities. There are so many things that can be done and so many things that we want to do, but quite frankly, we're limited. We're limited by the amount of money and effort that our volunteer boards can do. But I don't think we can overlook the advantages that we already have. Communication, as Bill pointed out, has been very important, and I thought I did communicate well. Every time, I think Ed will verify it, and Bill perhaps the last time, you had a decision, I was writing in support of the building commissioner's decision in those cases, communicating the planning board's wishes to the zoning board of appeals to uphold the building commissioner's decisions. And that leads me to one of the main things that I really would like to see happen in town is the enforcement of zoning. Now, I believe in zoning. I like zoning. Zoning is what keeps.
So that's moving beyond the scope of the question.
Now, ask me another question.
Unless you're going to tie that into a specific plan quickly.
Well, that was what I was getting at.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So zoning becomes what we all want to have in our lives because zoning protects what we have the most value in, which is our real estate, which is our homes, which is our family steads that we like to have and keep the way they are. So when somebody violates a zoning regulation, it not only violates the community standards, it typically violates a neighbor. And the neighbor gets upset and it diminishes, I think, property values even more so than any type of development ever would. Relationship to businesses moving forwards. I have to say that with the situation that we are in Hubbardston, I think the reality is that a small town is only going to support X number of businesses. We allow 27 businesses by right in the commercial zone. We allow 14 or 15 in the town center district with special permits, and we allow several other businesses to exist through special permits in residential zones. And with the situation that we have had so far, we denied our first business last year, I believe it was, or maybe the year before, when a man wanted to put a dumpster business on Route 68 up there at Ray LaJoy's old automobile place. Unfortunately, it didn't fit into the grandfather clause that was existing on that property, and we also felt that it may not be the proper place. It was out of zone for a dumpster business. What would the resident next door say to a dumpster business? It was a question that we asked, and it's a question that we thought was fair to deny the business.
So, going to open it up to other people who have questions in the audience, if they think they might. So, any other questions? So.
Can I go back to enforcement. Do you have like a methodology in mind? You know, you said you were on an enforcement committee or something?
The methodology is in place. The methodology as prescribed by the state is the zoning enforcement officer enforces zoning bylaws. In our zoning bylaws, we also have stipulations that if a resident complains to the zoning enforcement officer, he needs to investigate and he needs to take action against the offender if he feels it should be done. Several years ago, there was a bylaw proposed that was called the junk bylaw, or the trash bylaw, that was going to come in and be a sweeping indictment of everybody who had litter in their front yard. And quite frankly, I was on the committee that discussed that, and I was not in favor of that particular idea. So that grew into another committee, and that enforcement committee included Dan Galante and Jeff Williams, 2 or 3 others, Tom Larson, I believe, was on it. The end result was a recommendation that was actually incorporated, but unfortunately not practiced. And that came up with an opportunity for the building inspector to hire an outside consultant to do an investigation of a zoning violation. A zoning violation that he may not have the time to look into when he's on a part-time basis. And actually the town meeting appropriated $5,000 for that particular situation. If the zoning violation was actual and it could be substantiated through the investigation, the zoning enforcement officer then had the opportunity to write a ticket. And we have 2 or 3 boxes of tickets in the office. That ticket then would go to the Gardner magistrate, who we worked an arrangement out with him, and it would be adjudicated there as any other ticket would be, a parking ticket, a speeding ticket. Sadly enough, the tickets are sitting there, the enforcement policy just didn't get implemented. And I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good way. It's a good way to take the, if you will, the bickering that we've seen between select board and planning board on a couple of occasions out of the public domain and put right where it should be, where somebody in charge of enforcement takes the lead and it goes to a situation that gets adjudicated in the right venue. Not sitting here with everybody looking at me or anybody else saying, you have a bone to pick with this one, a bone to pick with that one. No, that's just simply not true. It's a matter of principle, I believe. And I think that principle is something that Hubbardston really needs to work on. And I think I've got that commitment from Ryan, and I think it's gonna work with our next building enforcement officer that we hire soon.
Additional questions from the audience? Anyone from home? No one? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks. Thank you.
All right. I know that we have some food remaining, so I'm hoping people will stay. You're invited to come up. Any questions you didn't want to ask in public to speak. I just will close by mentioning 3 positions in town that are very important. We have a Board of Health position that's open. We have 2 Finance Committee positions that are open, and a Quabbin Regional School District Committee position that's open. Those are extremely important elected positions that there is no one running for currently. So it's just my last pitch to get folks. We do have William Hanson running for re-election. There is an open position with the school committee. So we're looking to get people to volunteer and to offer.
You have a volunteer right there.
Tom is now in the Quabbin Regional School District.
If someone were to run as a write-in next Monday or Tuesday, whenever the election is, someone thinks, well, I could volunteer for the school board. Is it too late to run them as a write-in?
It's not too late to run as a write-in or to volunteer for appointment or any other type of position. But for write-ins, just make sure that people know your name and that they're registered voters when they write you in. Otherwise, it doesn't count.
Is there a minimum vote requirement in order for one to be able to be elected as a write-in?
I'm not brave enough to answer that with Joyce watching, so I will get that answer for you and come back.
Thank you. I'm just curiosity because
I know there is, but the threshold is very low.
okay.
Do they
But there is a
still
minimum
need-
though, no?
Do they still need to get
They do
No.
not.
I think it was 5 votes.
I think so too, but I don't want to say it and without knowing. So, all right. So this is just the last pitch. Volunteers, people in the community, so we can continue these great discussions. So we can join these people who are brave enough and honest enough and open enough to run for these positions. Really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you for coming. Have a good night.
Thank you.